shared mobility is one of the most visible and most debated transformations happening in our cities today, across Italy, across Europe. But what is the role that shared bikes and scooters can play in shaping more sustainable, more accessible, more livable urban environment? What do data say about our behavior as users and how those behaviors are changing, are evolving? How cities across Italy and Europe are evolving themselves, are changing along with the shared mobility revolution? And what are the next big shifts that cities should be focusing on when it comes to shared mobility? We'll be discussing all these topics in this live podcast. Welcome back. Welcome to Città Podcast live from the offices of Will and Cora in Milano. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you. First time in English, first time live.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Paolo Bovio from Will. Welcome back, Stefano Delli di From, co-host of Città Podcast. Hi, Stefano.
Ciao Paolo, and hi everyone.
And welcome to the Città by Future for Cities podcast, Maxim Romain, CEO and co-founder of Dott, which is of course one of the leading companies in Italy when it comes to shared mobility. Welcome to Città.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Maxim, I want to start this chat live from Will and Cora offices today in Milan, asking you, what role do you believe shared mobility should play today?
It starts with the question of why are we all living in cities? Why are we living in cities? And I think there is a reason why we are living in cities, aside the fact that maybe we were born in these cities. The reason we are in these cities is that we find opportunities. I found opportunities to create a company like Dott in a city where I could find these talents. I live in a city because I can easily socialize with other people. I live in a city because I can have the chance to see an art performance. I live in a city also maybe because, I don't know, I can go to a restaurant and enjoy nice food. So there are all these opportunities that exist in a city, and that's the reason why people live in cities. And so if you look on the surface of, shared micromobility, well, I think everyone will agree, especially older people, that it's a little bit annoying. You see them, they have flashy colors, they are e-scooters, e-bikes, they're on the street, maybe they are not in the right location. So, yes, they bring people from A to B, but what's the point, right? I think that could be a legitimate question. And I think then if you go a little bit deeper, and personally, and my wife always likes to tell me, when I see someone on an e-scooter or an e-bike, I'm always looking at them. Why am I looking at them? It's totally boring. It's like I've seen thousands of people doing it. Why I look at them? Because I always ask myself the question, where are they going actually? These people, like there's this woman on a scooter, where is she going? Is she going to see, I don't know, a lover? Is she going to go to a restaurant? Is she going to go to a business meeting? Is she going to a show? And I think that's the interesting thing with shared micromobility, is that we enable people to get together, and we help in a city to create these opportunities. And I really believe that that's basically the essence of shared micromobility, is to enable people to meet and help create these opportunities. And the way we do it is in a way that is environmentally sustainable, because we are basically carbon free, at least for the direct emissions. We do it in a silent way. We don't create noise in the cities where we operate compared to cars, motorbikes, or trucks or whatever. And we do it in a way also that is very well blended in the city I would say, infrastructure. It's very easy, it's very flexible, it's very easy to park. And so it offers a way for people to move very easily into the cities. But fundamentally, what we do, and actually it's the new mission of my company, Dott, is we help move people basically to be together. So that's, I think,
Thank you. Just a quick disclaimer for those who are not so familiar. Scooter is monopattino. Just to be clear.
Can you spell it?
Monopattino.
No, it's interesting what you're saying, because when doing this podcast, also doing and run a festival, there's nothing that trigger people more than talk about mobility, and especially micro mobility or public transport and so on. And the reason maybe is that when mobility doesn't work in a city, you can be totally part of the city. You can live at the very best of the city, and then so you are triggered and very angry of it. So it's interesting this connection that you're doing between moving in the city and also live at the very best. You are an international. Dott is an international company, but with an important presence in Italy. Where do you operate, and if you have any insights in different cities?
Yeah. So today we are probably the first operator in Italy. We operate in about 20 cities. So you have to think big cities like Milan, Rome, Torino, but also some small cities or smaller cities like Verace, like Padova, for instance, or Bari or Palermo. And doing about 10 million trips a year today in Italy. Behind the scene, and maybe that's what is interesting, is we have about 6 operation centers, and what they do is that they take charge of all the maintenance of the vehicles that you see on the street. So today there are about 15,000 vehicles every day on the streets of Italy. So they need to be maintained, repaired every day, and we manage also all the street operations, which means that we swap batteries so that these vehicles are always charged for people. We also reposition them so that they can be positioned where people need them. And so there is a lot of work behind the scene that is happening to offer this service every day to people in Italy.
And any differences in the typical usage of scooters and bike in different cities in Italy?
So it depends quite a bit. So if you take some of the big cities like Milan or Rome, it's a lot of local users and some commuters. So 80% probably of the users are local, so they are making trips every day within the city. A lot of them are actually also on subscription, so it's really part of their daily habit. If you go to cities like Palermo or Cagliari, it's a lot more tourist. So people coming and using this as an easy way to visit the city. And then if you take, I would say, mid-sized cities, for instance, Ferrara, it's a lot more commuters also that use. So they use our service to commute.
So you mentioned local users in bigger cities like Milano, Roma, tourists and commuters. Would you help us to kind of depict a profile of who are your typical users? You mentioned local tourists and commuters, but what is their average age? Are they mostly workers, students? I don't know.
Yeah. The first thing is that they are, for majority, young. So you have to think 18 to 35 years old is really the bulk of our users.
This means that me and Stefano are not considered young anymore.
Even if in Italy we are very young.
And I think it's because I would say older generation are more used to own their vehicles. It's very important for them to own the vehicles that they use, whereas the younger generation, I think, don't have anymore this ownership mindset and prefer to use services. It's just much more flexible. And the younger generation also are much less, I would say, inclined to use cars. Maybe they're also more they care more about the environment. I don't know, but the reality is that they have less driving license, they use less cars, and so because of that, also they are more keen to use bikes, e-scooters, or other forms of small mobility. So that's the first thing. It's like young people. Second thing is that there's a majority of male users, especially for e-scooters. But for e-bikes, it's the opposite. So we have more women and we have also older people using them. One of the reasons is because there is a perception, and we can discuss it later, that might not necessarily be true, but that e-scooters might be less safe. And so, maybe men maybe are a little bit more daring than women in terms of safety, or more stupid, I don't know. But and so anyway, the reality is that we have women that are more keen to use today e-bikes because they feel it's safer to use, and the same for older people.
What's interesting, what strikes me as interesting is that like in bigger cities like Rome and Milan, you mentioned that users are mostly local, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in the public discourse, in the media, you often think as shared mobility users as tourists. Oh, the tourists are taking the scooters and leaving them everywhere, something like that. No, it's something that you hear, but you're telling us that they are local users.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to, I don't know if you dug deep into the fact that maybe they live in a city, but they choose not to own a means of transportation. They still prefer to opt for shared mobility.
And also, if I can add, it's interesting what you said that many users are power user with a subscription. So if there's some difference, how many people they use it daily or for commuting, or if it's a specific profile, or maybe one time when I can catch the bus, so then I take a bike.
Yeah, so there are many aspects to your question, but the question is fundamentally, why would you use a shared micromobility on a regular basis, right? And so there are multiple reasons for that, but I think the first question is, even independent from shared micromobility, why would you use a micromobility compared to, let's say, a car, right? Or maybe even public transport. And the first reason is because for short to medium distance trips, so think 1 to 3 kilometers, it's actually much faster to go from one place to the other. You don't have to wait for a bus, for instance. You don't have the problem of parking that you have with cars. You don't have the traffic jams. And so you can very quickly go from one point to another point, and it's very easy usually to park. And so that's the first reason why people use micromobility in general. And then why shared micromobility compared to private micromobility? The reason, there are multiple reasons for that, but one is you don't have the risk of theft, which is a big reason actually, because for instance, electrical bikes are quite expensive. So when they get stolen, it's quite a loss. And so in many cities, Paris included, people prefer to use shared e-bikes for this reason, or shared e-scooters. Another reason is that you can combine it with public transport. So you can come to a city with public transport, and then when you need to do a short distance trip, you use a shared e-scooter or shared e-bike. And just to share data, we have about 50% of our trips actually that combine with public transport. So these are some of the reasons why people choose to use shared micromobility services on a daily basis.
So very interesting what you say, that 50% of your users combine shared micromobility with public transportation. In this past year, we talked quite often about mobility as a service, and the concept is basically that you can integrate different means of transportation. So interesting.
And this example of usage are typical of all the countries that where you operate, or just for Italy, or there are differences between, for example, Italy and Germany or France, where you operate on other countries?
Yeah, the big trends are the same, I would say, across all European countries, meaning that cities in general want less pollution on the streets, they want less cars, they are building more cycling infrastructure. There is, at national level also, there is a push for more electrical vehicles in general. And so all of this is favoring, I would say, the development of micromobility and shared micromobility, not only in Italy, but across all European cities. There are differences though. And one difference is that I would say in general, the demand for shared micromobility is less in Italy than it is in some of the other European countries, especially the Northern European countries. And there are a few explanations for that. One is cultural. You take the Netherlands, everyone has 2 or 3 bikes. If you take Italy, it's more every household has 2 or 3 cars, actually, not bikes.
Right.
So obviously, there's a difference of habit in the first place. The second reason is infrastructure. So in Northern European countries, the cycling infrastructures are much more developed compared to Italy. Italy is catching up. So there's a lot of more cycling lanes in Milan, in Rome. Yeah, but it's progressing. And so because of that, there's still a feeling that using micromobility vehicles in Italian cities is not always so safe. For instance, the case, for instance, in a city like Rome, even if it's improving. And I wanted to say a third reason, but regulation, obviously. In Italy, so regulation is also a real topic. Lately, I would say in the past years, the regulation has not necessarily been very favorable to shared micromobility. For instance, Italy is the only country that is requiring users to wear helmets. There's no other country in Europe that is requiring this. So this creates obviously a lot of friction for people to use e-scooters. There is also now the need for license plates that are very expensive. I think it's 30 euro per e-scooter. So for us, it represents basically 300,000 euro that we need to pay just for that. There's a new need also for insurance. And so all of this basically makes it, doesn't support the development of shared micromobility in Italy, unfortunately.
Yeah, apart from regulations, what are 3 data points or insights or elements that have most surprised you? Maybe also in a positive way when you look at the reality of your operations in Italy.
So the first one, I guess it's about perception versus reality, right? It's always interesting. And so the first thing is there's a perception that shared micromobility is expensive. It's not subsidized, it's private, it's expensive. Reality is that today the average price of a ride on Dott is a little bit less than 2 euro, which basically is less or the same as public transportation or metro ticket, right? I think not so many people know that. The second one is the perception is that electrical scooters are dangerous, or more dangerous than any other vehicle. Reality is that today there's 30% less accidents with electrical scooters than compared to electrical bikes. I think the reason is because the speed is limited to 20 kilometers per hour, which is much lower than e-bikes. And overall, there's much more monitoring in terms of safety for electrical scooters than e-bikes. And the third one, maybe that we talked already a bit, but is that the perception is that electrical scooters or maybe electrical bikes are used in majority by tourists or visitors, when in reality, for us, 95% are locals or local commuters. And 50%, as I mentioned, are connected to public transport. So it's really something that is used primarily by locals or citizens. Yeah.
It's interesting because you're addressing a lot of the bias that are connected to shared and micromobility. So it's dangerous. Also, it degrades the public space because you have all the scooters and bike parked all over the place, blocking sidewalks and so on. It's interesting because you're addressing by using data, saying that it's not the case. I believe that also there's a side of this problem connected to the cultural and also the behavior of the people, that how they use scooter and bikes, that they are using in a dangerous way. They are not parking correctly. So you as Dott, how do you take all these problems that are also connected to the single person behavior in terms of, I don't know, teaching how to use it, doing cultural campaign and so on?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt when we started, as an industry, which was 7 or 8 years ago, we created a lot of chaos on the streets, right? So there are so many operators, so much investment.
Yeah. Also in the Darsena in Milan.
Exactly. So you could see scooters or bikes everywhere. And obviously, it created a big public backlash where a number of people started to hate because it doesn't look good on the street. Obviously, they didn't see all the cars that were parked everywhere because people are so used to cars being parked that they don't see them anymore.
We talk about, also in this podcast, about car blindness, right? If you see an e-scooter or an e-bike which is parked where it shouldn't be, you're like, degradation, degrado. Oh, said it in Italian. But if you see cars parked everywhere, as it happens, by the way, around here, you probably have seen them all around this place. You don't see them, probably because we are not accustomed to it.
Exactly, and we use somehow all these bright colors also, which doesn't help. But anyway, this was creating a lot of chaos, and it created a lot of public backlash. I remember at the time when I was at a cafe in Paris, I could hear people literally behind me expressing their hate about e-scooters, and I was the one actually participating to this. So
did you wear the Dott?
Depends. Then we had to solve it, right? If we wanted the industry to stay and to provide this service that actually a lot of people also liked, and so. On one side, it was really a problem. The problem to solve was that there was no parking infrastructure for us, right? So if you want people to park correctly, in the first place, you have to offer parking spots, right? Otherwise, where do you park? And so there was this huge work that we did with many cities, which was on allocating parking space for electrical bikes or electrical scooters, which meant in a number of cases to take or remove car parking space and reallocate it to e-bikes and e-scooters. So if you take a city like Paris today, we have 15,000 parking spots across the whole city. I don't remember for Milan, but I think it's 2,000 or 3,000 parking spots that we have today also in Milan. So it's really a work of collaboration with cities to reallocate car parking space to shared micromobility.
Also because you have the other side of the question, you have to have clear parking space, but at the same time it's still free floating. So you need in principle to be allowed as user to park wherever you need to park. It has to be really dense in the city. Right?
Exactly, so it has to be very natural so that when you arrive at a location, most likely you have a car parking space, a micromobility parking space very close, and ideally that it's visible. So it needs to be usually always within 50, 100 meters so that it's kind of natural. And then there's technology. So with our technology, we were able also to enforce parking through GPS localization. And if a user doesn't park in the right location, we might warn them a first time, and then maybe at some point, unfortunately, give a fine to try to make sure that people park in the right location. And then I think there's the question of habit, right? As you said, is that I think the more people are used to park in this parking location, the more it becomes natural for them to find them, and the better it is. And I think in a city today like Milan, I'm not saying it's perfect. Obviously our teams are still working to reposition scooters or bikes in the right location. But generally speaking, I would say 98, 99% of the scooters are well parked.
Yeah, I just want to underline that as users, we notice that the technology that supports us as users to park precisely in the spot is also evolving. Through the years. It's now very, very, very precise. also to mention across different operators. So
Yeah.
the trend is very clear, and it's helping to overcome this obstacle of bad parking, which is one of the most spread, so to say, polarizations that we see. Talking about innovations and new solutions, what are innovations that you are currently working on? If we look at Italy, I don't know, maybe there are like new cities you're expanding into, or a new. I mean, what's going on? What are you currently working on?
The first thing is I personally believe really in the integration of public transport and shared mobility. As I mentioned, 50% of the trips are connected between public transport and shared mobility even today. And I believe that we can support each other, and that people should naturally be able to move from public transport to shared mobility. So when they do small trips, shared mobility. When they do longer trips, public transport, and some will be connected. And to help that, I believe there's something that we are working on that could help, which is tap and go technology. So what it means is that if you have a public transportation card, or if you have a credit card, you can not only use it for public transport, but you can also use it on an electrical scooter, so electrical bike. So you just tap with your card or with your Apple Pay, your phone with Apple Pay, and then immediately you can unlock the bike or the scooter and use it to make a ride. Which means that ultimately, in my view, you should not really need the app itself, the Dott app, but just tap and go, which is much easier. So that's really something personally I believe in, and I hope we can roll it out in the coming months or years. Second thing is, and maybe of interest, especially being here in Milan, is we are also launching this year a new fleet.
Okay.
Much more comfortable, much more durable, cheaper to operate. And Milan actually will roll it out pretty much this month. And what's in it for everyone using Dott? Well, it's much more comfortable ride, especially on the cobblestone streets, which are pretty rough in Milan. And also, I think the fact that it's cheaper to operate, more durable, bigger battery autonomy, etc., will ensure higher availability, so better reliability for everyone. So you are more sure that your trip will end. But more importantly, also it will enable us to maintain, I would say, relatively cheap prices for everyone. And my goal ultimately is also to not actually increase, but progressively be able to decrease prices for the users, as we are able to lower the cost of operating these e-scooter or e-bikes, so make it more affordable for everyone.
Okay, so tap and go and a new fleet as the upcoming solutions that we're gonna see that will be rolled out in the next few months. So interesting. Stefano, we talked about a lot about local authorities regulations, but I know that you're very much interested in this topic.
You addressed this topic, this issue, or also an opportunity many times, because when you arrive to a city, of course, you need to work with local governments.
Yeah.
And we can understand that it's not an easy task, especially for a private company that offers this kind of services, so spread, so also very use intensive within the city. So in your experience, how is it to work with public local authorities on this kind of
is it like
challenges?
Tap and go? Is it seamless?
No, it's for sure it's not easy. Each city is I would say a different problem to solve. I would say, or opportunity.
Each city has its own fleet of local authorities, let's say like this.
Yeah, and they have their own ideas, they have their own history, their culture, so it's always different in each city. So you really have to approach it on a case-by-case basis. But also that's what's interesting, right? Is that because every time we come to a city, it's really, okay, how can we build together a shared micromobility service in this city, which might not have the same needs in every city, right? So if we talk broad, I would say overall, actually, we are pretty happy with the collaboration with cities in Italy. So we work with them. We work on parking infrastructure. We share data also with them. When I'm the most proud personally is when cities use our data to plan their own infrastructure, when they can see, for instance, that there is a lot of rides on a specific street and they say, oh, actually there is no cycling lane. We should put one cycling lane. And some of the cities do exactly this. So that's really the positive story, I would say, and what is really interesting. So cities, I would say, in general, really good collaboration. National level, much more difficult.
Okay.
We depend on them obviously for national regulation, and I think it's a very unfortunate. But in the past years, we have not been able to even secure one meeting, with the Ministry of Transport, when the reality is that in the same time the Ministry of Transport was working on very impactful regulation for electrical scooters, for instance. So we talked about it, but the helmet, which was made mandatory, the new license plate, the new insurance requirement, all of this without even talking to us, which are, obviously the one responsible for it.
Yeah.
Well, this is news. Right,
Yeah.
so that you haven't had a meeting,
single
meeting.
The unfortunate thing also is that it's all based, I would say, on perception or populism, right? Because reality, for instance, for electrical scooters is that they are not more dangerous than electrical bikes. On the contrary, our data proves that we have 30% less accident than on electrical bikes. So why make put so much regulation and friction, I would say, on the use of electrical scooters, shared electric scooters, when actually it's more safe. There's no...
in a way, the e-scooter is really the friction point in Italy, so to speak, also from our point of view, right? But do you share this view? So that it's happening like that, as somehow bikes are kind of already part of a urban environment, of course, since a couple of centuries, whereas scooters are like the new object, kind of mysterious. So let's regulate it. This is our instinct as Italians, probably.
The electrical scooter, it's a bit the bad boy, It's
the bad boy, the maverick.
It's young,
right?
A little bit wild.
It's in adolescence phase, so you need to regulate it. Pretty much as adolescence doesn't work. Usually. I think also that it's interesting at the same time to underline that if you look at the data of the trends of how, in general, shared mobility has been evolving in Italy, e-scooter has been the game changer, right? After the pandemic, it is the single most it's the single quota that has been increasing steadily through the years. So it has been something that pushed micromobility in Italy.
In general. Shared e-scooters are more than 50% of all use of bikes, e-bikes, and e-scooters and e-mopeds combined. Just e-scooters, right? So it has been a huge driver of change in terms of how people move into cities and moving people from cars to, I would say, carbon-free and noise-free, basically a type of vehicles. And so it's really, I would say, a pity that the vehicle that was the most impactful in driving this change in the shared mobility world is actually the one that is the most sanctioned today in Italy.
And then, of course, you have complexities, right? We are here in Europe. You have historic city centers. There are real complexities, but of course, our mantra as well is always to look at the data first and then try to regulate. So,
is there a city or a country where this relationship between scooter and the cities is more advanced?
I would say actually, if you look at it objectively, at least at city level, for most cities, actually, there's a good collaboration and good acceptance of e-scooters at this point. There is almost no cities that today is questioning, the fact that e-scooters should be part of of the future of mobility in cities. It's very rare, actually. Like, obviously, there are a few cases. There has been Madrid. In Italy, there has been Florence. So there are a few cities here and there that decided to ban e-scooters, but by and large, everyone recognized the role of shared e-scooters in the future of mobility and in the transition of cities to be carbon free. Yeah.
It's interesting because your service really helps to ease a huge pain point in cities right now. So the last mile or the small commuting, as you're saying, or also the on-the-go, on-demand transportation that in a crowded city like Milan or any others, to have this kind of not just Dott, but all the players in your menu of transportation really helps to ease the pressure also on public transportation. And
yeah, talking about cities and Europe, I was thinking about Paris, right? They recently had an election, a local election, and the newly elected mayor celebrated his victory, actually, by riding a shared bike across the city. So it was a powerful image, right? That a new elected mayor should decide to celebrate by riding a bike. In a way, Paris in these few years has gone through a lot of changes. It was really transformed during the last 12 years in the direction of low emission mobility, of bikeability, and so on. So looking at the future, what, from your point of view, what are the mobility policies that the cities should be pushing for? Maybe policies that, from your point of view, aren't getting enough attention. So what is, to say it another way, what is the next real frontier?
Well, the first one I would like to talk about without talking about regulation is leadership. And, Emmanuel Grégoire, who is the new mayor of Paris, I met him about 6 months ago, actually, in a coffee place. And
in the same coffee where they were, where they say, bad things about mobility. No, sorry.
No, a different one. And I saw him arriving, actually, on a shared e-bike.
Okay.
I think that's, the power of leadership in this case is that he's not only a person that is talking about, the fact that people should move to bikes, use less cars, but actually he's doing it himself, right? Okay. I think the power of symbolism is extremely strong. So I think the first thing is when you have mayors of cities or deputy mayors that themselves actually are using bikes or micromobility vehicles or green vehicles, and showing the way instead of, let's say, using, the fancy car with a driver, I think it sends a very powerful message to everyone, and it helps to drive the cultural shift. And so I would hope in Italy we can see that also in the future. And the second thing, yes, it's about infrastructure. So obviously, the more cycling infrastructure, the more density of parking infrastructure for small mobility, the more people will feel safe to use it, the more it will be convenient, the more they will use it. And we have seen it also in the example of Paris, for instance, where there has been massive project for putting everywhere cycling infrastructure and cycling lanes and parking. And the third one is obviously you need regulation which supports the development of micromobility vehicle or shared micromobility, and ideally makes it also quite price affordable. Some of the regulation we see today in Italy actually makes it more expensive, more difficult to use, at least the e-scooters. What we need is exactly the opposite. We need to make it cheaper, more accessible, and sometimes subsidies can be interesting also, especially for people who have lower means, in terms of directing subsidies to them so that the price of using shared micromobility vehicles is lower.
Yeah, so interesting. So leadership, infrastructure, and regulation, Stefano.
I think that is the best conclusion of this conversation. From my point of view, it was really interesting to also understand a little bit about behind the scene of this kind of service and also operation, because every day I walk outside my apartment, go in the street and see all the offering of this kind of services, and it's interesting to understand how it works actually.
Yeah, and also to see that many things have been changing in the last few years, but many things are about to change, hopefully. And this is, sure, something that pushes cities in the direction of low emission mobility. So, yeah, there is quite some road ahead, but yeah. Thanks for sharing with us this insight, and thanks for all of you to have participated in this conversation. Thanks to those who will be listening us in the podcast. But most of all, thank you, Maxim Romain, CEO and co-founder of Dott, to having been a guest of Città. So, as of today, we have recorded our first live in English podcast. Stefano will be just the first of many, probably. Who knows?
Who knows? Definitely, it was one of the most interesting conversation that we had this year. So we're looking forward to see what's going on in mobility space.
Thank you, Maxim.
It was a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.